Hello and welcome to another Jay's Politics podcast, from the Podcast 99 Media Network. You can visit the podcast.org or be directly at jpoliticspodcast@gmail.com or be directly on Twitter at jpoliticspodcast. This is another episode of This Week in Politics. This is episode This Week in U.S. Politics, episode number 11. While I filter up the sounds here. And moving on from that. So, this week we've had a couple of events here in the U.S., specifically here in the Tacoma area. We have one that I want to touch on, but I think the biggest news to begin with here is going to actually be what's going on in Korea. As I'm sure you're all aware, I don't want to say it's in South Korea, Kim Jong-un signed basically a treaty to end the Korean War, and it is one of those. It's one of those things that just kind of like, wow, did that really happen? Because it is because it's something that's been going on for the last 65 years or so, and it's just wow. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up an actual story to go off of this actual article. But, it is what it is. Let's see here. You would think that this would be something that, well, maybe not CNN would want because, again, it's anti-democratic. It's, letting Trump have it. But let's see what I can find here. Back to this here. Sorry. I guess what I could do is actually talk about what I wanted to talk about while I'm looking for an article here. What I could talk about is actually what hit me on Monday. Sunday or Monday. I bought it. I want to say it was Monday. The county prosecutor in Pierce County here in Washington has office, I believe, in Tacoma. Started to shift. Since I can't seem to find what I'm looking for, I thought I would move forward. I'll just move forward here. The Pierce County prosecutor, Mark Lindquist, one of his spokesmen, tried to remove negative news from Mark Lindquist's Wikipedia page. Now, we all know that Wikipedia is a open source, anybody can edit website. It's for academic purposes, it is not the best it's not a good source to cite. Let's just put it that way. However, it is a great starting point to find sources for whatever you're researching. Oftentimes, if I'm researching something personal or for school, I'm actually checking out Wikipedia first, scrolling through their sources, and then finding the sources that interest me. And I'll write them down or I'll copy the links onto a Word doc or a notepad, whatever. And then go from that and then research them all as needed. But what I find most funny about all this and why it jumped out to me is I'm, as you know, going to school for a public relations degree, a communications degree, focusing on public relations. And this happens to happen in basically the last week of my first PR course. And I'm just like, where did this guy go to school to think that it is okay to delete negative news sources from your boss's Wikipedia page? Whether PR trained or not, that's neither here nor there, but it's just, wow, really, like, come on now. Who does that? Who actually does that? Now, I have a link that I put when I created this site down below, and I've been slacking on some of my stuff lately, just with school coming along and everything. But when I was able to get the link, I put it in when I created the event for this YouTube page, which reminds me, YouTube. We'll go to live now. go to live control. Sorry, pulling up my chat really quick. But when I did this, I actually included the link, kind of like this is what I wanted to talk about. And then we also have the wow, I can't even speak today. Then we also have the South Korea signing their little armistice or treaty, whatever, to end the Korean War, which really great because how many people have we lost for that, But anyways, it's hard to wrap my mind around. Well, it's not hard for me to wrap my mind around this, but as somebody even with a base understanding of what public relations is, just from a layman's perspective, this was pretty foolish to do. I mean, it's like, really? What the heck? So this article is by Sean Robinson at the newstribune.com. It was dated April 23rd, so that would have been Monday. Yeah. But it's just one of those, I'm like, really? Anyone can edit Wikipedia. It says so right on the front page of the website, among the most visited on the planet. However, the definition of anyone gets iffy when a public employee uses public equipment to scrub from a Wikipedia page unfavorable references about his boss who happens to be running for re-election. Again, your boss is running for re-election and you want to fix, and I use that term very loosely and in air quotes, fix his Wikipedia page because of the negative references or unfavorable references. And it's like, what? Really? Like, wow. Well, can this guy be any more dim-witted? But it just goes to show you that sometimes people are more worried about when it comes to elected officials, more people are worried about staying in office than they are about the efficacy of it all. Basically, whether it is reasonable or understandable for them to do what they do, or what the actions that lead them to do it. Anyways, the public and online records show that James Lynch, spokesman for Pierce County Prosecutor Mark Lindquist, tried to edit Lindquist's Wikipedia page in early March. The same records show Lynch was banned from further editing attempts. So he gets banned, and this is the headline. I should have started with the headline, but I wanted to kind of let that sink in for a minute. The headline is the prosecutor's spokesman banned, then outed for scrubbing Lindquist's Wikipedia page. And I think that's more updated one than what I have in the paper downstairs, but still. Anyways, long story short, he made edits. They were found out and undone by Wikipedia editors. And then, yeah, it's great. These articles were shedding unfavorable light on Lindquist's actions in office. The stories were published by the Tacoma News Tribune, Cairo TV, and the Seattle Times. The links, including a 2015 Times editorial that called for Lindquist's resignation, have been restored by anonymous Wikipedia editors who refer to Lynch's charges as, quote, vandalism, end quote. And I did do air quotes on that because it is quoted in the article. And it's just, I think it goes a little too far as to call it vandalism. Because again, it's like you're trying to help out your boss, and I understand he wants to help out his boss. But was it ethical? Was it honest of him to be doing it that way? Was it okay for him to be doing that? And that's the question we have to ask. That's the question that we have to understand. And that is awfully bright. Let's turn that down a bit. Anyways. So, with that, what do we end up having here? It is, excuse me, sorry about that. It's just somebody not thinking. as somebody who's entering the public relations world, and hopefully someday I can either run for office myself, or I can be a part of a campaign of somebody that runs office and become one of those spokespersons. But at the same time, it's it'll take me time to work up that way. But it is what it is. Lynch acknowledges his attempts to edit the page and asked about his involvement. He provided, as a communication manager for the prosecutor's office, I routinely monitor the office's presence online. I made changes to the Wikipedia page after noticing the page was heavily weighted in the negative, which provided an entirely one-sided and unfair view of the office. I sought to create balance. Anyone can edit Wikipedia pages. An individual of this office prosecuted is believed to have vandalized the page and deleted anything positive about the office, which to my understanding is contrary to the rules of Wikipedia. I'm going to go back to this. This is all one quote, just broken down by paragraph. Anyone can edit a Wikipedia page. An individual this office prosecuted, i.e. somebody who they prosecuted, is believed to have vandalized the page, and I'm using the term vandalize, the page and deleted anything positive about the office, which, to my understanding, is contrary to the rules of Wikipedia. Because we work for the people, we want them to have a fair, balanced, and unbiased information. Technically, and that's end quote, unbiased information, end quote. Technically, it was Lynch who was accused of vandalism and attempts to suppress information, according to comments made on Wikipedia. Lynch's mention of, quote, an individual this office prosecuted refers to John Dempsey, 48, a Seattle resident. In February 2015, Dempsey was charged with 7 counts of felony harassment on the charges. The charges dismissed 8 months later stemmed from a separate child custody case filed in Pierce County Court. How do I put this? Them assuming without proof that it was this John Dempsey person to justify his act, to justify the spokesperson's actions, does not sit well with me. I hope it doesn't sit well with any of you. But the whole point is that it's one of those things that we have to look into ourselves to see how we are going to handle it, how we do these things. Trying to think how we're going to interpret these things. And politically speaking, as somebody who votes quite regularly, at least in the regular elections, sometimes in the primaries, a lot of times my primary votes get negated because I declare myself independent, and therefore I can't vote for a lot of offices that are party politics. So, with that said, it's really one of those. It's really hard on that it's really hard for me to let that slide, to let them say, oh, well, he did it first, so therefore it must be okay for us to do it. That doesn't work with my mom. It shouldn't work with Wikipedia. It sure as heck shouldn't work for the prosecutor's office. I mean, that would be like, they're justifying it here would be like another person saying, well, he stabbed me in the leg, so I stabbed him in the arm. No, that's not okay. You shouldn't do it. Neither one of you should have done either of those things. Those types of things. It is just one of those. How do I want to put it? It is just one of those events that we're just left to try and figure out what the heck's going on. Not much more to this story, but Dempsey. They're going into the case with Dempsey and the child custody case. Dempsey was the petitioner. The matter was contentious. While the custody case was active, Dempsey posted a music video on his Facebook timeline after a New Year's Eve party. The video played a violent punk rock song that depicted men in suits being shot and stabbed. Dempsey added a comment, "This is my plan for Superior Court." The video provided a bias for harassment charges. Dempsey was acquitted on all accounts. Superior Court Judge Ron Culpepper found that Dempsey didn't intend to threaten any of the specific parties in this case, and added that prosecutors couldn't prove otherwise. And again, this goes to his custody case, but also the case that he was harassing people, felony harassment. Since then, Dempsey has become a vocal critic of Lindquist, who commented publicly on the harassment case after the initial charges were filed. Dempsey's father filed a public records request for Lindquist's internet activity earlier this year. The county's response to that request was subsequently shared with the News Tribune. The information Lynch's, the spokesperson, county-owned public account with attempted Wikipedia edits. Dempsey criticizes Lynch's attempts to remove information from the Wikipedia pages. The entry presents relevant to the facts from the most credible sources, Dempsey said. Mr. Lynch earns $86,000 a year making PR for Mr. Lindquist. 4 Wikipedia editors reversed Mr. Lynch's changes and banned his IP address. People should look more closely at Lindquist's records in public office from sources other than his publicist. And again, I can't fault Dempsey or his father for thinking this way. We need to hold our elected officials to a higher standard than ourselves, which we should have a high standard for ourselves to begin with anyways. But to sit here and act as if everything is okay, that, it's just a, crony trying to protect him, blah, blah, blah. It's not really Lindquist's idea. We don't know that. For all we know, Lindquist could have saw this on his Wikipedia page and been like, hey, I need you to take care of this. And if Lynch was smart, he would have done it on his own time, on his own computer, from somewhere other than his own home, like a laptop on, Starbucks network, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just little things like that. Not that I'm condoning such actions, and I wouldn't, but I mean, if you're going to do something like this, at least be semi-intelligent about it. But, it is what it is. Lindquist, who's seeking re-election this year, is known for taking pains to guard his public image and attack critics. A long-running public disclosure lawsuit involving text messages on his personal phone revealed that Lindquist told a subordinate to coordinate online comments on a News Tribune story that he felt was negative. Clickbait. Gotta love it. Anyways. Let's see here. The text message case ended earlier this year with a judgment that ordered disclosure of the messages despite Lindquist's effort to prevent it. All told, the case cost taxpayers more than $1 million in fines and attorney fees. It's one of those things that Lindquist, yes, having a reputation for protecting his personal image, which we all should do, but he, among all people, should know that being in public office means that you're going to be scrutinized harder. You're going to have people that are out for you because they think that you walked all over them, whether you have or not. I mean, it's like, say I win the Powerball tonight, $177 million, and I win it to myself. I go down and collect it, and say I don't set up a trust to collect it for me. Well, guess what happens then? My face gets plastered all over the internet saying that I won $177 million. Guess who's going to start coming out of the woodworks? Family, friends, etc. Say, oh, you remember that time I helped you out, back in 1986? And I'd be like, when I was, 6, 7 years old, things like that. Just little things like that. It's like, come on, you really expect, me to repay something like that, etc. Same thing goes for people who are in elected office. The people who help you run for office are going to want to cash in. Not necessarily all at once, not all right away, etc., etc. If you tread over people and just use them as a stepping stone to get to somewhere, or while you're in your elected office, you treat somebody pretty harshly. Sorry, text message from work. Just making sure it wasn't important. But it's just one of those things. He knows this. He should not be telling his employees to do anything on his behalf. He shouldn't be telling anybody. But the long story short of the matter is that um, is that people are going to try to remove negative information from Wikipedia pages that they like or dislike, or I should say, remove negative sources from those that they like and add negative sources, or remove positive ones from ones they dislike. The closing paragraph of this article states that since the March editing attempts by Lynch, other anonymous users have tried to revise the page in similar ways, sparking a minor edit war that so far has led to no changes. The would-be editors do not appear to be using county equipment. Again, it's just how to put it. There's a reason why these negative stories are out there. There's a reason why there are positive stories out there. Now, if it is true that positive stories have been taken from his Wikipedia page, they need to be put back. If they're putting back all these negative ones. Now, granted, Wikipedia is one of those pages that everybody, and I started to emphasize on the P there, but Wikipedia is one of those pages that just does not want to die when it comes to edit. Doesn't want to die when it comes to edit wars. The editors, the actual editors that are hired, whether hired for monetary purposes or do it on a voluntary basis for Wikipedia, do it because they want the integrity of knowledge to be shared. That's the whole point of Wikipedia, is to share knowledge of things to people by people. That's the whole point of having a written language. The benefits of having spoken language, video conferencing, things like that allows me to spread my voice so you can hear my tone, hear my context. With the video, you can see my body language, or some of my body language. But the written text is also important because at some point, either the videos will be gone, the audio will be gone, or whatnot. But at least the written document is a lot easier to to suss out, to basically find and rebuild, especially in a digital age. Now, along with all of that, as somebody new to the public relations world, as somebody new to PR, in the sense of what I understood to be PR is actually different than now that I've gone through my class. I mean, a layperson such as myself, before getting into the class, I understood PR is somewhat like marketing, but not necessarily marketing. And that's still somewhat true, but there's a little bit more to public relations. It's not just public relations isn't supposed to be just a one-way street from the PR people working for a company, whether actually working for a company or hired as a separate business, telling the public what they think the public wants to hear. They're also supposed to take in what the public says, what the target audience says, pass it up, and then between the upper management of the company and the PR department, figure out the message and resubmit it, basically. In a nutshell, that's how public relations is supposed to work. It doesn't always work that way. We are concerned about the public image, the branding of things, similar to marketing. But at the same time, we also have to not just tell people, not just do things to help people. We need to be there for the actual target audience. We need to be there for the people. I look at public relations as basically an extension of a public service, whether it be my military service, my service with the post office, however brief it was, all sorts of things. We just have to PR people, we have to understand that there is a certain amount of efficacy that we have to follow. And if you're not willing to do it, then you don't need to be in the position. I don't care who my boss is. If my boss, whether I was junior PR person and they said do this or you're fired, I would just gather up my box and walk out the door. Because there's no reason for me to go and edit your Wikipedia page, first of all, on my work computer. Second of all, you're not going to pay me to do it on my home computer. And it's not an ethical way of me doing my job. Now, if I'm the CEO and I ask somebody to do that, I'm just as much in violation of the ethics of public relations as anybody who complies with it. Now, if I go to my friends and just be like, look, guys, News Tribune's hounding me, whatever, and my friends decide to do something about it, I don't ask them to, they do it. That's different, Or if I'm a PR person and I'm just like, yeah, I'm working for the Seahawks, they've been having a crappy couple of seasons, man. It's gotten hard to make ticket sales, and we're getting murdered by the local press. And my friends start hounding the press, be like, hey, back off, guys. They're trying, da 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 da. Again, as long as I'm not asking them to do anything and they do it on their own accord, that's their prerogative. But if we're asking people to meddle in things in an official capacity, that's where the issue comes in. Truly, I mean, I don't know how many times in a job where you've asked somebody to do something that's required of the job, and they slough you off and you get mad. But at the same time, if it's something that's unethical, can you really blame them? It's like if one of my female bosses said, you're going to go out on a date with me or I'm going to fire you, that's unethical. I'm going to say no. And if I lose my job, I lose my job. But if I did it, oh my goodness, would law enforcement be all over me? Would the press would be killing me, etc.? I mean, again, I'm just rambling here, and I don't mean to, but when it comes to public relations, take what, especially in elected positions, take the PR person's words with a grain of salt. Do some digging of your own. Again, don't rely on Wikipedia. It's not the be all end all for research, but it's a good starting point. It's a good starting point. And don't follow just your preferred news source on a topic either, especially about a politician, whether you love them or hate them. Go to the other side of the story and read about it. I mean, I'm constantly saying this, especially when it comes to politics. We have to be responsible with the knowledge. I mean, it's Dave says at the start of his show, as part of his intro, the enemy of knowledge is not ignorance; it's the illusion of knowledge. I hope I said that right, because I'm doing it entirely by memory. But again, it's just one of those things where we have to. It's just one of those things where we're the electorate. These people represent us. The prosecutors represent us in cases against people against our community, i.e., the murder, felonies, things like that, property, etc. Congress, National Congress, your state legislature, Congress, whatever you want to call them, Commonwealth if you're in Virginia. Those types of things, we have to. They work for us, and we have let too much the power of money, the almighty dollar, supersede our opinions when it comes to these elected officials. Now, some are there and trying to do the best that they can, and I know that. Oh God, what was it? A few months ago, what was it that I got on here and I was just ranting because I was just upset with Congress not doing their job in general. It was a government shutdown. That's what it was. I still haven't reached out to my senators or my congressmen yet, but I might end up doing that soon because I did make a promise to do that. I haven't. And I'm gonna try and get a small little recorder or something to record that. Maybe a couple mics and Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Just brainstorming here, but it's just one of those things. You know, I want my voice, my opinion to be heard. It doesn't have to be acted upon. Just because somebody is elected to office, whether you voted for them or not, doesn't mean your voice weighs more than any other person's voice does. Uh, they represent all of us, and what they need to do is hear from all of us. You know, Contacting the local office for your national representatives is one of the best ways. If you go to Congress.gov, they have a list of everybody, obviously, but they also here. I'm actually going to pull that up really quick and show that on the on my YouTube channel here, really quick. All right, let's see here. Members. I think there's a how to contact your members. You go to representatives, and you can actually. Yep, here we go. Let me share my screen really quick. Sorry about the clicking noise. Doing this on a laptop is a little further of a reach than what I am looking for here. So share screen. So let's make sure I am sharing my screen now. Yes, I am. Okay. So right here, I'm on, and this is specifically for the House of Representatives, but there is a spot, and I'll try to find it. But if I type in, we'll say my old zip code, just because I don't want to pull up, the zip code. All right, so it's saying here that there is some overlap, so it could be one of two of these guys. So let's go with my old address. It doesn't matter the apartment number. Olympia, Washington. And so when you have overlap, it shows you Denny Heck. There you go. So Kramer, I think he's up in the Shelton area, maybe. Cover some of this area. I don't know. But if I click on Denny Heck, DennyHeckHouse.gov, I think I have to sign up for his email, but I'm not going to do it right here. And contact. Request a meeting. Very simple. Nice picture of the waterfront in the background, by the way, guys. Really enjoy that. And see, it even gives you a chance to request a meeting, etc., etc. But it also has a way for the media to contact. So, like, if I was going as if I was trying to go in for specifically to contact him, or wanted to sit down and do an office visit with him, I can contact his press contact specifically. And if I'm in the DC area, etc., or whatnot, I could contact him. But anyway, long story short, that's how you can do it, and you can do the same for the Senate. Let's see if I can go to. All right. Representative. See, that's House, legislature, elected officials. I thought there was like a generic one, but it could be this USA.gov. Yeah. Contact the president by filling out this form, etc., etc. or by calling the White House, which you're never going to get. But, I mean, like, even here, I can choose my state. Kind of going way off topic here, but I think this is educational. I'll try to put links to this all down below later and in my show notes to go up on to go up in this to class 1, Maria Cantwell. Anyways, long story short, I'm going to stop sharing here. But basically, long story short, is your representatives work for you, not the other way, not for the corporations in the area. Make them work for you. Hold them accountable. Hold their PR people accountable, especially if you think they're doing wrong. This is why you have the Freedom of Information requests, Freedom of FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, FOIA requests. Put those out there. Find out what's going on. Hold your representatives accountable on votes, etc., etc. Just rambling on being a good citizen. So I'm gonna end that and go over to the Korea thing. 20 minutes left to go. Eventually, I'm working to get some points where I can actually take a break, kind of like what Dave does with his show. Some PSAs, stuff like that. Anyways, it wasn't a treaty; it was a summit between the Koreas. I guess it's called the Korea Summit or Korea's Summit. I don't know how they want to put it. Excuse me. But basically, Kim Jong-un and what's his name? I'm so sorry. I am bad with pronunciations, but I'm also trying to find Moon Jae-in? Moon Jae-in? Jae-in? I don't know. I'm sorry. Kim Jong-un has returned to North Korea after the summit with the South Korean President Moon Jae-in, in which they vowed to remove nuclear weapons from the Korean peninsula, but provided no specific new measures. It is one of those things that this is going to be historic if it's true and if the peace can hold. I don't know about reunification. That's going to take many years down the line. I hope it takes less time than I think it's going to. But growing up in my house, we watched MASH, although on rerun. We watched MASH and all that. And seeing the Korean War, seeing all the things about the Korean War, I mean, I don't know if my uncle served in Korea. I had an uncle who served in World War II as enlisted aviator. But anyways, the Korean War has just been going on all this time. In an armistice, no less, but it has not officially ended. What? How do I want to put this? Just the fact that we just had the Winter Olympics in South Korea, and the North Korean teams didn't have enough people to field, so they made the unified Korean teams. And I thought that was a really good step towards, at the very least, bringing the leaders together to talk. And here it is. It's come to fruition. The leaders are speaking. They have talked to each other. So now, where do we go from there? Well, I don't know. They've agreed to they agreed to basically end their they've agreed to end their nuclear programs. They want to basically prevent another war between the North and the South from happening. Let's see here. This article is from the Associated Press, talking about the United Nations Secretary General um, Antonio Gutierrez is applauding the truly historic summit between the leaders of North and South Korea. UN spokesman, I prefer spokesperson, not spokesman, but Stefan Dujarric said Friday that the quote many around the world were moved by the powerful imagery of the two leaders coming together to advance harmony and peace on the Korean Peninsula. End quote. He said that the Secretary General quote salutes the courage and leadership that resulted in the important commitments and agreements agreed actions outlined in the Panmunjom Declaration for Peace, Prosperity, and Unification of the Korean Peninsula. Djurg said Gutierrez counted on the two Koreas to, quote, swiftly implement, end quote, all agreed actions, end quote, to further inter-Korean trust building and reconciliation, end quote. Oh, why didn't they just quote the whole thing? I don't know. The quote and end quote thing and all of this. Trust building to and reconciliation, end quote, and progress towards sustainable peace and a verifiable denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, end quote. He says Gutierrez, quote, look forward to these gains being consolidated and advanced, end quote, at the upcoming U.S. North Korean summit. Now again, President Trump is going to go meet with Kim Jong-un. And hopefully the two can, stop taking it out on Twitter and state-run media to resolve their issues and move forward. A part of the reason I want to talk about this is the picture of the two leaders of North and South Korea holding hands in a triumph of signing these peace agreements. It's, how do I put it? It was moving. It was like the world is starting to come together to take steps forwards to building not the I don't want to say the end of communism because not this is gonna tick off a lot of people, but communism not necessarily a bad thing. The implementation and the practice of authoritarianism, communism, sure. I, I I could not argue that one. But the underlying principle of communism that everybody shares in the work, everybody shares in the gains, is commendable. It's not utopian. I don't care what anybody says. It's not necessarily a utopian thing. It's just trying to level the playing field between the haves and the have-nots. Now, yes, there are those that are lazy and just don't want to put forth the effort and just want whatever they can be given to them for free. How do you incentive? This is what Soviet Russia was having a problem with, was incentivizing all workers to do the same thing. If I work twice as hard as Yuri over here and he's getting the same as me, I'm going to be pretty upset because I'm, covering for his butt by working twice as hard as him. Whereas in a capitalist society, if I work harder, I'm going to be rewarded more, etc. But that's a double-edged sword. If I slack off one day, I'm basically the same boat as Yuri over there. But the fact that if Korea can reunite and become one nation, whether it's under Kim Jong-un or whether it is under Moon Jae-in, I do not know how to pronounce these names. I'm sorry. But if it's under the capitalist South, as long as it can unify and stay cohesive for the long term, I think that'll be great. That means that and I won't see the end of this. I know I won't see that point of it. But that just means that we can move forward as a society. Maybe we can get a step closer to a semi a semi-Star Trek state where instead of having to have a World War III to basically be the war to end all wars, where we develop warp drive, etc. We don't need those events to come to the peace that they have. You know, in Star Trek, you have people that believe in religions that have come together to diametrically opposed religions come together and work out a peace and understanding to end basically the extreme fundamentalism of some of these contentious issues. And that's where we need to go. That's where we, as a world society, a global society, need to put a, need to come to a head. Is understand that we are going to have our differences, but we have to do what's best for everybody. And just because you believe one thing to be right and I believe another thing doesn't mean we are both wrong, or one is right, one is wrong. We both could be right at the same time. We don't know. And we just have to get to that point. We have to come to that understanding. We have to know what it is that we're talking about. We have to know what it is that we are dealing with, and so on and so forth. So, I hope that with this Korea thing, and hopefully with President Trump going to North Korea, we will be able to see that. We will be able to understand. We'll be able to understand what the limitations are to what North Korea and South Korea see as the limiting factors to reunification. Because in the United States, we had to do our own reunification 100 and what 150 years ago, 153 years ago. I'm sorry, but it's just one of those things, all this talk about reunification in the Korean Peninsula can't be over, how do I put it? Can't be overstated. Can't be done in a haphazard way, but it can't also not be done. It needs to be done to help bridge the gaps, bridge the animosity between countries. I mean, we have to do the same thing here with Russia. We need to put aside differences that we had between the Soviets and us. We have to make sure that whatever Putin and his government are doing, whether it be a neo-Soviet thing or whether they're just trying to do something entirely to annoy us, I don't know. We have to make sure that we can move forward and understand what they need and bridge our gaps, so that way we can bring our two societies together. And then as the superpowers start to do it, the other powers will come to it as well. And we have to lead by example. And that's just it. Is if we are not willing to trust anybody else, why should they trust us? And that's truly the heart of the matter. Is we demand that all these countries trust us to do the right thing, yet we don't trust anybody else to do the right thing either. So what's it going to be? Who's going to be the ones to basically put their neck out on the line, to trust somebody that we normally would not trust? I don't know about you guys. I don't know about Republicans, Democrats, socialists, independent in general, moderate left, moderate right, libertarian. I don't care. But we have to learn to bury the hatchet ourselves in our own political realm here first, before we can expect to do it on a global scale. And every country has to do that at their own level too, before we can ever move forward. And I think Korea is setting that example. I mean, it's amazing how even 153 years ago we were, ended our civil war and starting our own reunification process, that we're now splintering apart again based on political ideology over what? political correctness. I mean, that's really the only thing that I could see as an issue. I mean, we have the professor down at Fresno State that's tweeting about Barbara Bush when she passed away, and oh, I've got tenure, you can't fire me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I can still fire you. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pay you, but at the same time, I'm sure that there's some sort of code of conduct that you have violated. Again, it's one of those, you've done this on privately, you've done it in your own sanctity of your own home, I guess is what they were saying. You weren't linking it necessarily in the concept of Fresno State opinion, but at the same time, we have, as a society, also have to acknowledge that there's some truth to the fact of, Barbara Bush and George Herbert Walker Bush's past that, is unsavory. But that doesn't necessarily have to define a person. That doesn't necessarily have to define who they were when they passed. The old saying, leopard never changes its spots, tigers don't change their stripes, etc., etc., etc. Well, yes, those are characteristics of those people, but they can change those characteristics. People aren't patterned a certain way and cannot be changed. It's hard to change. People who knew me back in high school knew me as this skinny 120-pound kid. Now would see me and they're like, holy crap, you're fat. And I am fat. There's nothing, I won't say there's nothing wrong with it, but, I acknowledge that I am. And if I want to change it, I have to be willing to make the change in it. And I am, and yet I'm not. Because if I solely committed to it, I'm sure I would lose the weight and keep it off. However, the problem is that there are things that derail me. We have to, as a society, stop being uncommitted. We have to stop being like, oh, so-and-so picked on me, and therefore, da-da-da-da. We got to stop with the political correctness of everything. I mean, I'm going to sound Republican here. I'm going to sound libertarian. I'm going to sound whatever you want to call me, alt-right, whatever. But we got to stop babying and pandering to everybody's wishes and just treat each other with basic courtesies, basic understandings. I'm A-okay with the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, people do suffer from gender dysphoria and things like that, and I don't want to belittle them. To be quite honest, I don't. But it's going to sound that way, and I will take the heat for it. It's part of being open and public with this. Going back to my PR statement, there will be backlash on this about what I'm going to say next, but that's not the point. The point is if you want to refer to yourself as Apache attack helicopter as your gender, fine. But at the same time, if we start acknowledging every specific gender that somebody could potentially conceive of coming up with, like today, tomorrow, I'm going to start identifying myself as not male, even though I'm male, but I'm going to identify myself as International Space Station. What right do I have to blow up on somebody to say, hey man, how's it going? I'm not, man. I'm International Space Station. And this is a lot of extreme, like the BuzzFeed stuff, people trying to blow things out of proportion. But at the same time, the fact that it does happen at all, if I'm gonna use the wrong pronoun to describe you because of appearances, because that's how we as an animal, as all animals, address people, treat people in our societal structure, hierarchy, however you want to call it, is by appearances first before we get to know somebody. I'm going to do that. No, yes, I will apologize. I mean, the other day at work, I called a woman a man just because lately at my work, I've been seeing a lot of men wearing long hair, looking like they belong in a heavy metal concert, and she had her side turned to me, almost back to me, and half covered by a pickup truck. When I only have a torso and long hair to deal with, I'm not going to just assume a woman all the time, nor should I, but I should have erred on the side of caution and said ma'am and had a guy upset at me about it. But I apologized. I was like, sorry, ma'am. I didn't know. I didn't know. We've had a lot of men wearing long hair, etc. Made my excuses, but apologized. Whether she took it as an apology or not, that's up to her, not my opinion. Doesn't really phase me anyways. But the point I'm trying to get to here is political correctness has gone too far in our country. Political correctness is going too far in our country. And we, the people, the far left, the far right, everywhere in the middle, we have to come to a common understanding of what things are, especially when it comes to political correctness. Because there are people that I have worked with in the recent years at Safeway, at Albertsons, at the post office. Well, not so much at the post office, because I didn't work there long enough to get to know people that well. But just as an example, places that I work where people expect a certain level of political correctness. Perfect example, the post office, you cannot talk about politics, especially when it comes to customers, the people you're delivering mail to. You cannot discuss politics with them. Even if they engage you first, like, hey, what do you think about this new policy backed by John McCain or backed by Bernie Sanders or etc. Insert representative senator here. That level, I understand, and I'm okay with that. Even in my line of work in retail, I'm okay with that. I don't discuss politics with customers unless they broach the subject first, and this is the biggest caveat, and they ask for my opinion. I don't just give it to them. They have to ask me and discuss it with me. Now, my coworkers will discuss it all the time without there, because I know what they're comfortable talking about, what they're not comfortable talking about. And if they feel uncomfortable or they say, I'm done with this conversation, done. So anyways, long story short, getting back to where I was going with this whole Korea thing, the unification, we all have to take a step back and reunify as our own countries, and then we can reunify as a global society. We are all one species. We are all humans, even though we have different skin colors, different hair color, different eye color. Some people are taller, some people are shorter, etc. No matter what the issues are, we have to take here in the United States, we have to take political correctness out of everything. We have to take the belittling of people who do want the political correctness, calling them whatever you want to call them, social justice warrior, etc. Fine, but you can't also. But that means also those that are calling the people Nazi all the time, that are diluting these words, needs to stop too. Calling somebody who disagrees with you a Nazi is not the way to solve an argument. Is not a way to solve it. Use the terms in the correct. Use words in their correct terms. Use the correct definition, and stop changing the definition every 5 minutes. That's ultimately where we're going to be at. That's ultimately where we have to get to as a society to be able to move forward and move on to whatever unification we need to get to in our lifetimes or in the next lifetimes. So again, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you were watching live or are watching later, this has been another Jay's Politics podcast. This has actually been This Week in U.S. Politics, with a little bit of world politics in there this week, episode number 11. And you can reach me at podcast99.org by listening to us there, or you can reach me directly at jpoliticspodcast at gmail.com or jpolypodcast on Twitter. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Enjoy the weather wherever. Enjoy the weather where you're at. Have a great weekend.